parent shows to the kid can be easily transmitted. They get it, they think that's the way to live their life, they think it's acceptable, they think it's okay. So it's super critical that if you don't want your kids to copy you doing bad things, then we need to stay away from doing bad things. If you don't want them to speak with a foul mouth, then we should try to tame our own tongue. And that's, that's very critical when you're teaching little children. The home is a place to transmit wisdom and values of life. A family that values honesty, integrity, will most likely raise children that are honest with integrity. Likewise, if a family doesn't value any of those good things, if they lie all the time or they steal all the time, most likely the children will think that lying and stealing is perfectly normal. In the family, teaching is not formal. We don't usually come home and have a blackboard and we say, well, this is what we're going to do, this is what we're not going to do. Usually we react. We try to set an example, and life struggles will come along, and that's when you talk about it as a family. You sit down and you basically deal with it as a family. And that is when you know what the family values are. And when I remember when I would talk to my godparents, my dad wasn't there all the time, but when I talked to my godparents, that's what they would say. All the wisdom, all the lessons learned, how to deal with struggles, how do you deal with your first heartbreak, how do you deal with, getting bullied and all that. You talk about that in the family, and that's how they learn. And the family is also the place where you train leaders. And how do you do that? Leaders are people who can take a goal or a vision and lead the rest in accomplishing whatever goal it is. In the family, when the mother and the father sets a goal, this is what we're going to do. You guys are going to study, and then you're going to have a profession. When you have a profession, you're going to have your own home, you're going to have your own family. We start to make plans. And every now and then, you revisit the plan and you talk about it. I know my son, he's graduating from college now, but when he was a freshman, it was like his plans were all over the place. Like, are you going to be an economist, a lawyer, it's everything. And I said, we can't be all that. So at some point you're going to have to choose. And the plans will change. Every now and then we would sit down and we'll talk about the plans. That's the way in our family we train them to be accountable for what they do. We train them to be future leaders. They will lead their own family someday. And that's how we encourage them to do things to accomplish their goals and their dreams. The family is also a domestic church, and that is when we transmit the faith. That's when they learn how to pray, when to pray, how often to pray. We also teach them in our family how they should get involved with the church. Being a good Christian, a good Catholic is great. You can go to church every Sunday and that's fine. But sometimes it's good if we encourage our own children to participate, to spend their free time making a difference in the church. There's always a need for volunteers in the church, and there's a lot of ministries that they can join, and so we encourage them to join in the different ministries. Hopefully someday they will see the value of participating in church, in the community. So as fathers, we always say the role of the father is to be the priest. and we're supposed to hand down all of the teachings that the church would want us to transmit to our children. The grace of God flows through the Father. And I so believe in that. Let me give you a few examples. The role of the Father is so critical. I will mention a few names, and I think you're going to see a pattern that they all have something in common. If you guys ever heard of Genghis Khan, Emperor Hirohito, Mao Zedong, Pol Pot, Saddam Hussein, Ivan the Terrible, Osama bin Laden, Vlad the Impaler, Joseph Stalin, and Adolf Hitler. You guys have any idea what all those guys have in common? Yeah. What are they?
They are, dictators.
They were known for some of the most horrific killings of all time. Okay. Many hundreds, thousands, millions of people were murdered under their rule. And they have one thing in common, and I looked it up. They all grew up either having no father, or a father that abandoned them at an early age, or a father that was there but abused them. All of them. All of them. And it proves to you that the role of the father is so important in raising children that value life. So why is it that God's plan for some families is not happening? If we pray and we go to church, how come sometimes we hear of God's plan not happening? Ask me why not. Okay, let me tell you why not. It is because in some families, God has lost His central place. And you can see that. Parents no longer bring up their children in the discipline and instruction of the Lord. And you can see that. The inspiration is no longer there. Sometimes families, put so much emphasis on career success. And we always, they have to make a lot of money. When they start to choose which career they're gonna take, most of the time the parents, they will say, the career that makes the most money, that's what you want to be, and also sometimes parents look to psychology as a source of wisdom, right? When kids get in trouble in school, right? They see the counselor, and the first thing they'll say is, "Your kid needs counseling." No, your kid needs love, but that's the first thing they're going to say. It's all this scientific diagnosis about the kid. And if we believe that, and we just say, okay, well, the counselor said my kid needs counseling, and you send him to counseling, the counselor will start to deal with it, and you'll see that the problem will escalate. It gets worse and worse and worse and worse, because that's not what a kid needs. The kid needs a family, a father, a loving father and a loving mother. Another reason is that husbands and wives do not follow God's order for them. What is God's order for husbands and wives? You need to be together forever, for eternity, for better or for worse, in sickness and in health. That's God's order, for husbands and wives. And when we don't follow that, things start to fall apart. What happens? Our goals, instead of having one goal and one vision, the father has a goal, the mother has a goal, and it's two different directions. And that's when things start to fall apart. When you don't have a common goal, if you cannot sit down and talk about a common goal and a common vision for your family, it's not going to work out. Your kids will grow up confused. They don't know who to follow anymore. we always stress on materialism, having an easy life, having the big house, the sports car, you know. For us, you know, we start to neglect, you know, the passion that our children have. You know, what makes them shine? What brings out the best in them? What makes them really happy? Putting money aside. You know, we need to understand their strength, their weakness, what makes them, you know, put 110%. We need to know that, and we need to understand that and be sensitive, and not just tell them, you know, it's all this nice acronym or a title that's important. And through the years, many of the responsibilities of parents has been taken over by groups in society. You know, raising them, because we have to work. Now mothers are working as well. What's happening is we leave the kid to the daycare or babysitting, and so they end up raising your kid. You know, whatever values the babysitter had is pretty much what the kid is going to grow up with. And we need to realize that. So on weekends, when we are with our kids, we need to spend more time. I know it's so tempting to watch football. I watch football. I love baseball too. But if they need time, we need to give them the time. That's the only time they get to spend with us, or when they come home. You know, we need to start asking them, how did your day go? How was it? You know, what's the best thing that ever happened today? And if they come home with a sad story, we need to listen. We need to understand. We need to make them feel that they're not alone. We're there. You know, modern recreation facilities also allow very little interaction. You know, and all of these gadgets around us, it's limiting the amount of time we get to spend with them. You know, like, we're guilty. You know, our kids, when they were growing up, we both agreed, let's not buy them video games. Again, this is in the 90s, and we said we held off as much as we can, not buying a PlayStation for our son. So he was, I think, 6, 7 years old, something like that. And so he went to school, and all the kids were using handheld video games or PlayStation. And he said, he invited one of his friends, do you want to come over and have a play date? And let's play a video game. Right? And basically his video game was, he turned on the computer, put Word on it, and he will type letters, erase them, type letters, erase them, or he would play like basketball, like manual basketball, like small ball in a cup, and then every time he shoots, he goes back to the computer and puts 1. And then his friend scores, he goes back to the computer, 1, 1. And I was so embarrassed, I felt so bad. You know, the kid went home shaking his head, probably thinking my son is cuckoo. You know, and I felt so bad. And you know, we sat down and I said, you know what, maybe we should rethink this no video game thing. Because I don't want my son to go back in school and he's going to get laughed at. So finally we gave in, and we got a video game and that he played with his brother. And so now, you know, we said, okay, well, no violence, no video game, you know, that has a gun, you know. But all games have guns, so we couldn't get him anything that doesn't have a gun. So one day he was playing with his classmate that came over too, and they were, I can hear them in the room, they're like, choo, 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 choo. And I said, is that a gun? They said, no, it's a laser. It's a laser. But again, you know, that's just an example. Now that I'm much older, I started to look at it and I said, well, maybe that's a good thing, but that's not the way you shield your kids. You explain to them what's good and what's bad, but you don't like put them in a box. You don't lock them in a room just so they won't be exposed to these things. So we learn, we get older, and I think I did a lot better with, you know, with the 3rd and the 4th and the 5th child, you know, as far as we raised them. you know. So those are one of those things. So pay attention. You know, if they're spending too much time with their electronics and they're not even talking to their own brother or sister, there's something wrong. You know, we need to balance how much time they do that. The interaction, the forming of relationships is so important. And you can't do that with text messaging. You can't have relationship with text messaging. Because in order for you to establish a relationship with someone, you need to see their pain. You need to see their joy. You need to see their excitement. What brings them down? What breaks them apart? You know, what lifts them up? When they're joyful, you're joyful. You know, that's what builds relationships. And you can't do that with text messaging. However many emojis you put in there, it will never capture the hug. It will never capture, like the compassion you feel when you see tears flowing down their eyes. You can't see that with an emoji. I know they're so creative now with tears and everything and horns, I don't know. But emojis will never form relationships. We need to make an effort to actually form long-lasting, enduring, uplifting relationships. The pace of modern life has become very fast, and I don't even need to say anything. I think this is self-explanatory. It's just so fast. It used to be that, as a kid, you come home. When I was a kid, come home, it looks like I have like 10 more hours to play outdoors, ride my bike, go neighbor's house, and then I come home. It's only 6 o'clock, and there's a lot of things to do. Now it looks like there's so much pressure for kids to do work, and they come home, they do even more work. And then, if that's not even enough, for our first 2 kids, we take them to Kumon. So they go school, Kumon, and then when we get home at 7 o'clock, they do homework. By the time it's over, by the time they're done, the day is over. They didn't have a life. And so my other 3 kids, when they were growing up, we were a little older, we started to realize they need a life. They need a life. They need a school work and life balance. They need to play. They need to relax. They need to have fun growing up. And so we changed a little bit. So we learned as we go along. And it pays to have 5 kids because, you make a mistake on 2, you have 3 more to make up. So that's why, my wife said last month, she said, "Dad, I'm already delayed 2 months." And I said, "Oh, I welcome that. Because a 6th kid, I think will be so much better now." So for us, it's a learning thing. You can never get it right the first try. And you get better at it. It's practice, practice, practice. Practice making decisions for the better, the better, the better. And it just gets better over time. So we know that the family is under attack. They take away our time. They take away our attention, our focus. They take away our goals. And society, society is the worst judge out there. Because kids will make mistakes. They're not perfect. They'll make mistakes. And some of them will be very serious mistakes. And if you allow society to judge them and agree with it, then you just failed them. You just failed in becoming a father. Because a father and a mother will never give up. Never give up on your children. Never let evil forces take over them. They will be tempted to do things, drugs, for example, is very rampant in schools. Private school, highly rated school, gifted, whatever, it doesn't matter. At the back of the gym, there's always drugs. And, my kids, we move a lot. So we moved to Burbank and Northridge and Porter Ranch, and we put them in Catholic schools, we put them in magnet schools, and we went to Porter Ranch, they went to the 10 out of 10 school. Now, I don't really care about the rating, but what I'm saying is, it doesn't matter what school it is, the temptation is there. Okay, you can bring them to the best school, but they will still go there with imperfect kids. And if they're imperfect, they will make silly mistakes. So, we need to stand by them. We need to empower them to go against all the evil temptations that they will face. We need to be there, especially not when they're doing good things, even more when they're doing bad things. So what else can we do? What else can we do? You need to make a decision that in your family you want God's plan to happen. You need to have a plan. So in our family, we have this thing. We attended the kids' village last summer. And as an exercise, they made us create a family dream board. And a dream board is nothing other than a big white board, and every member of the family, you're supposed to, draw or write what your plans, your goals are, what you want to be, what you want to become. And as a family, you look at that, and you support each other knowing what everyone's goal is. And the idea is every year, every couple of years, you'll make one of these. And you look at it and you'll start to compare how your dreams have evolved. Have you been consistent as a family? Have you, kept up with what you think is God's plan for you? You need to take time and give attention to the task of building a strong family. We always say in our family, we don't leave anyone behind. Whether you do something good or something bad, we stand by you. For some of you, and I've shared it in some occasions, our struggles with one of our sons, and it doesn't matter how many times he makes a mistake. It doesn't matter how many wrong decisions he makes. A father will always be a father, and that's what I told him. I said, you come to me, and I will do whatever I can, to make things right. I'm not going to succeed all the time, but rest assured that I will give it 110%, to make it right. And so far, every time, I give him that type of attitude, he comes back repentful. And he comes back, asking, like, Dad, can you help me with this? Dad, you can help me with that? And I think when you show humility to your kids, they will show humility back. When you show arrogance to them, they will show arrogance back. We need to pray together as a family and make prayer a common and daily occurrence in your family. We learned when we joined Couples for Christ about blessing your kids when they walk out of the house. So we started doing that. So every morning, before they go to school, they fall in line, youngest to oldest. And we bless them every morning. And we have the oil of St. Padre Pio. And we rub it in their forehead and we bless them. And we say, may the Lord bless and keep you. May you have a good day. Have a fun day today. And then when they come home, we ask them again, what happened? What did you learn new today? So blessing them and teaching them the power of prayer is really important when they're young. But it doesn't stop. Our 21-year-old, or 20, turning 21, when he leaves and we're there, he still falls in line like this. And we still bless him. There's no age. There's no age limit in praying over your kids. Especially when they get older and they start to have their own families. That prayer will continue. It will never stop. And hopefully, when they have their own families, they will do the same thing. So fathers should take steps to assume full responsibility for the spiritual and material needs of the family. So we need to provide, but I know, and I'm guilty too. In my younger years, I worked a lot of hours. I started the company and all that. And looking back, if I had a choice, I would have probably spent a little less time at work and more at home, spending a lot of time with my children when they were growing up. Well, I'm making up now. I'm home all the time. Like I said in talk number 1, after 20 years I left Disney, and then I had a heart attack, And it was life-changing for me. It was an awakening for me. And I think now I think I get it. I think I know what God wants me to do, and that is to be a father. So I spend a lot of time at home, and you know, I've seen them grow, and I'm so proud to say that I've seen them grow day after day after day. I see how they make their decisions, you know, how more responsible they've become, and I witnessed that. And that is something I could not have brought